Facilitating and leading teams. Lesson 9. Using teams to improve performance. How many teams do you have and need? Have a problem? Form a team to solve it. This management theory has been proposed by many a consultant and blindly followed by many organizations. When I first started working with teams over 30 years ago, it was actually a struggle to get to organizations to have lots of teams in action. Ironically, more than 40 years later now, most organizations have too many teams in action. They have redundant teams, duplicate teams. In other words, we're having way too many meetings, groups of people getting together in an attempt to accomplish something. That's what I call a meeting. We have too many teams, and the sad thing is, often it's just certain people that are on all these teams, and if we streamlined our team, we could probably engage more folks. If you think about it, there's a finite number of teams that a given organization either needs or can effectively support, and this is important. Usually, the number of teams that an organization can effectively support is much lower than the number of teams that an organization needs to successfully address its short and long-term strategies. Most organizations don't measure team effectiveness, however, so they don't know how ineffective many of their existing teams are. In turn, they do little to address this ineffectiveness problem, and they continue to form additional teams. And the main issue is there's a dilution of leadership that quickly occurs. There's a dilution of people that have team-based skills that quickly occurs. And until you develop that capacity, it's hard to effectively support your teams. Lots of teams. You can define the number of work teams, focus teams, and project teams you actually need to accomplish your organizational goals, just as you can define the number of skilled team leaders you both currently have and need as part of next-gen leader standard work. If you want to maximize organizational effectiveness, you have to address team effectiveness first. Simply calling a group a team does not mean that they will be successful. In fact, following this belief will actually erode team effectiveness over time, as truly skilled team leaders are stretched too thin. They're trying to lead too many teams, and people become disenchanted with the team process. Do you like going to meetings? It depends. Effective ones, sure. Ineffective ones, not so much. The intent of this lesson is to help you clearly identify how many teams you need and what those teams should be working on. Also, I hope that you'll find ways to reduce the number of project and focus teams that you currently have. By doing so, you will free up time for individual process improvement skill practice and team leadership skill development and team leadership capacity development. Finally, you'll also be making being on a team meaningful again. Do you have teams? If we define a team as a group of people who need each other to accomplish a result, then it can be said that all organizations have teams. Now, for me, this all got started way back in 1996 when I read a survey conducted by Training Magazine. And the results of that survey are shown on the visual. And it showed that only 73% of the organizations that responded to the survey said that they had teams. And in those organizations, that only 55% of the employees were members. So I'm thinking about, what do the other 45% of the employees do if they're never on a team? Now, many years later, I don't think that our collective opinions have changed that much. This disparity points out the need for better operational definitions because I feel that all organizations have teams. And so I think what comes down to is a lot of people say, yeah, we got groups of people, but not that many of them are effective, so I wouldn't call them a team yet. The immediate rebuttal that one might hear to the last statement is, we might have people that work together, but we don't consider them a formal team. My response would be, well, what do you consider to be a formal team? In the true sense of the word, a group of people is not officially a team unless they're working together to get good results, truly unless they have a charter. That said, don't all of your workplace teams meet this definition? What's the main purpose for them being at work each day? Execute the value stream, support the value stream, almost always as part of a team. If a team must get good results in order to officially be a team, does this mean that a football team that loses all of its games in a season is not a team? Now, I'm being a bit silly here, but I've spent a lot of time trying to sort out the different team names, designs, and applications that exist in the world. You see, I believe organizations, everyone should be on a team, but we get so caught up in the names and the buzzwords and the programs, and we don't design the jobs to include an effective team experience. I've gone through the anguish of trying to reserve the use of the term team to only those groups that were effective. I worked in places that made that distinction, but I found myself using the term too rarely. I had too many groups and too few teams. All things considered, I finally settled on the belief that job design, how one spends their time at work, is key to defining team type and team membership, and that's particularly important when it comes to leader standard work. Team usage myths. And we have talked about these a little bit already in prior lessons, but if this is a first-time lesson for you, let's run through these real quick. Teams should always be used if possible. No, there's certain cases where individuals may get us better results more quickly. Team building ensures team cohesiveness only if it's done well and linked to job change that occurs after the team building event. Any group that meets as a team. Personally, I like results demonstration to help define the team. Most teams are effective. Depends on your standards of measurement. The more teams you have, the better. That depends on the number of leaders you have. Teams can be effective without cohesion. Yes, but can they sustain that effectiveness? And then most project work occurs in the meeting room, not in a virtual world. The meeting room provides a point of summary, a point for dialogue, a point for final decision making. But most project work now occurs virtually. Using teams as a means to improve organizational performance has become a common work practice over the last 40 years. Unfortunately, our misuse of the team approach has resulted in a lot of confusion relative to what constitutes a team and what the focus of different team types should be. In my opinion, all supervisors and managers are on at least one team, the one they are responsible for supervising or managing. Believe it or not, however, a lot of supervisors and managers only see teams as being those groups that meet away from the job to work on projects. Oh, those people that work for me, they're not a team. They're the folks that work for me. They don't see themselves as a work process team. If you're not on a Six Sigma, Kaizen, or process improvement team, you're not officially on a team. That's the perspective in a lot of organizations. What's your perspective? Are you on a team? How many teams are you on? Teams are required for sustained high levels of performance. However, simply forming teams or calling a group a team is not the only thing that's required for true team effectiveness. In this lesson, we focus primarily on the role that a supervisor or manager plays as a process team or work group leader. We also look at the other two types of teams, project teams and focus teams. Focus teams are groups like safety committees, recognition teams, leadership teams, and how those types of teams are needed to support the daily continuous improvement efforts of each work group in the value stream and each work group that supports the value stream. Supervisors and managers are often a member or a leader of each team type. They're the natural leader of their department, which usually consists of several process teams. They are often asked to serve on safety committees or leadership teams, which represent two common types of focus teams. In the higher performing organizations, supervisors are also leaders or members of project teams that focus on putting Six Sigma, Kaizen, or other process improvement initiatives in place. Forming and participating on teams is the easy part. Reaching true levels of team effectiveness is much more challenging. Organizational improvement drivers. Why are teams necessary? Well, in addition to gaining the advantage of additional perspectives and building ownership, teams are needed to obtain buy-in for changes, especially major ones. When people have the chance to contribute their ideas and concerns about a proposed change, they feel a greater sense of ownership in making it happen. In turn, they're much more apt to help make the improvement work on a regular basis. Finally, Work teams exist as a result of how the organization's jobs, processes, and work systems are designed. While the use of project teams and focus teams is optional, and a lot of smaller businesses do not even have them, it's pretty difficult to avoid using work teams. They are already in place. Now, the sole proprietor organization that runs their own individual call center and doesn't have to rely on anyone else to be successful each day, maybe they're an organization without a team. But even then, you have stakeholder teams that you must be a part of to be successful within your own value stream. So, why do we need 3 types of teams? In most organizations, the jobs of work team members are not designed to give those people time to work on projects. They can focus on using daily performance feedback to make smaller but consistent improvements over time, but if those improvements require rewriting procedures, redoing training packages, ordering new equipment, even possibly making new labels to place on things in the workplace to keep things better organized, it takes time away from the regular job. Project teams are needed to implement fundamental system changes that result in leaps in performance. And so that is where you want to have your work team folks go if they want to contribute more than just ideas and feedback. Focus teams are another place where work team members can contribute, and they often contribute there on safety committees and recognition teams before they get involved with project teams because of the skill differences involved. Focus teams help maintain a focus on those strategies and performance areas where improvement must be consistent over time. So why can't we just have individuals do the projects? Well, that was the way it was back in the day. Engineers, for example, do projects by themselves on a regular basis and usually do them well. Many organizations often make the mistake of giving a project to a team, even though an individual could have completed the project themselves in a much more efficient manner. By doing so, they often delay the implementation of a key improvement that would have begun paying for itself sooner. So we must be very job design aware when we're looking at the mix of individual work versus teamwork that is intended to put key improvement initiatives in place. Unless a high degree of ownership and alternative perspectives are needed, individuals should lead the projects. They can engage the process owners as the project progresses, but they don't have to go to meetings every week necessarily. They don't have to have time built into their job to help the engineer or help the process leader work on the project. Teams are recommended when changes impact a lot of people, or if one person does not have the knowledge necessary for implementing it in an effective manner. It's key that you keep the distinctions between the 3 types of teams: work process teams, project teams, and focus teams in mind, because there's lots of different synonyms for each of those 3 team types. High-performing organizations rely on all 3 team types to help them achieve their goals. Team involvement is considered to be an important part of each staff member's job.